Welcome everyone. We're talking to Ronna Detrick today. We're very excited, Ronna, and thank you so much for coming and participating with us in the Celebrate Life Summit.
Absolutely happy to be here.
Awesome.
Ronna, what made you start your business?
Well, to some degree, a state of desperation. I got laid off from my job in March of 2009. And it was out of that experience and just trying to think about what I wanted to do, partly while I was still on my separation pay, right? I still had severance money coming in, and it was just kind of a random sort of thing to think about. I'd been blogging for at least 3 years by then, had a blog, an online blog, but hadn't really crafted much more than that. So it really just grew out of the desire to try to think about what I could possibly be creating, and would it be possible for me to actually build an online business and support myself in that way. So that's where it started. It morphed relatively quickly, certainly over the last couple of years, into something much, not different necessarily, but it continues to change and flow and move into places of my own energy and passion, and it has been fueled probably more than anything else just by the opportunity to develop relationships with other people. I just have been stunned by how powerful the relationships have been over the last couple of years, and that's kept me going, right, and continues to help me build and grow and think about what next to do. So
Great.
yeah.
The Celebrate Life Summit is about learning to connect with your true self. I have learned a lot from you over the past year or so about living my truth, and it's just been phenomenal. Can you tell our viewers a little bit more about that idea of living your truth?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Shauna. I appreciate that, and I'm glad that that's been true for you. My passion around this topic comes right out of my own life experience of living way too long not doing it. And when I talk about truth-telling, I don't ever mean like lying. I don't mean that. What I mean is that we edit and we censor and we play small and we sell ourselves short, and we're afraid really to step into places of voice and power and strength and all those kinds of things, because it's really risky for us. It has cost and expense to it. And so for me, that's where it comes from. It's just living a life for many, many years that on the outside would have looked very similar to what you probably see now, right? Able to articulate how I feel in relationship with people, working, being a mom. I mean, all of those kinds of things continue to go on. But what I recognized was that there was one dialogue going on in my head and another one that was coming out of my mouth, or a set of things that I was feeling and thinking in my head, but something else that I was displaying externally. And so it got to a place where I recognized, like, even the people who are in relationship with me aren't in relationship with me. They're in relationship with a facsimile of me that I think is who they most want, but isn't really who I am. And then this process of trying to be who I really was very undoing for me and for the people around me. It was very hard. It's really hard to step into places of authenticity and really say how we feel and say the things that need to be said. But that process of both recognizing the gap for myself and then testing the waters and trying to figure out how to do that is now what I talk about all the time, right? It's what I look back to as this really defining moment for me of where I thought, you're going to do this or you're not. Now, step it up or don't. And if you don't, then you have to stop it. Like, you can't keep complaining, right? So that's it's my personal story, right, that has moved me into this place then of being really passionate about it on behalf of other women. Yeah.
You touched, just talking on this subject now, but what are some of the truth-telling struggles that you have faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, just to repeat, I think the biggest one was just this awareness of editing and censoring, and being afraid that if I were to really say how I felt, or really act the way that I wanted to, or really talk about what I wanted to talk about, that just all hell would break loose. And so those have been the struggles, and those are the ongoing struggles. I think that all of us, especially as women, learn at a pretty early age how to censor and edit. culturally, that's what we're taught to do. Not necessarily to be quiet and silent, though that is a piece, depending on our backgrounds and family of origin issues, but more just this adapting and being malleable to what's going on around us. We learn that really, really early. Lots of us are codependent. Lots of us grow up in environments where we're making everyone around us happy. And there are beautiful and good things about that, but those can also be super, super harmful for us. So I fell prey to all of those things, just like any of us do. What was the second half of your question?
How did you overcome them?
Okay. First, just by acknowledging, of course, that those were things that I was doing. And I think that's almost the hardest thing for us to do, because we don't really realize we're doing it. Mm-hmm. We're so used to it, so used to placating all the people around us, that we really get into this process of saying, well, this is my life, and I just need to kind of suck it up and deal with things the way that they are. So I think that's the first step, is really just beginning to recognize this disconnect that's taking place. And then the second thing that I tell people, and it was my own experience, I think sometimes we hesitate to step into truth-telling because we feel like the whole world's going to come crumbling down around us. Mm-hmm. And it might. That's a possibility. Mine did in some ways. But I also think that I probably overestimated how bad it was going to be. And there were small incremental things that I started doing before I stepped into much more bold and risky places. So I would just test the waters. I would come home from being gone all day at work. Actually, I was in school at the time when I started recognizing this, and I would come home and I would say, one time tonight, I'm going to say how I actually feel when you ask me a question, is what was going on in my own mind. And it was really hard, but it was just one time I would try it. And then the next day I'd say, now one more time, can you try to just say exactly what you're thinking instead of having these wheels spinning a million miles an hour in your brain? So I think there's lots of ways for us to do that incrementally. And I'm a huge advocate for us being very kind to ourselves. We spend so much time beating ourselves up for who we aren't or what we think we should do, that when I start talking about truth-telling, I think women go, I'm a horrible person because I'm not telling the truth. I'm like, no, don't do that. Like, you're a great person, so let's just get more gentle with yourself, right? Instead of this pressure to have to conform or to be this huge risk taker all of a sudden.
Right.
So,
along those lines of truth-telling, a lot of times, like you said, there's this fear, right? And a lot of times it's that we're not good enough, that if we show our true selves, it's not enough. We're lower than everyone's expectations. So
yeah.
I know you do this a lot on your blog. I think even just this weekend, I think maybe this week,
yeah.
you just wrote about the fact that we are enough, right?
Yeah.
So maybe share that message that I read all the time, but maybe share that with our viewers here today.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's two statements that I work with a lot. One is that you are enough, and the other one is that you're not too much. And I think for a lot of women, it's actually the second one that they're more concerned with, that they're too much. If I really showed up, if I really did and said the things that I wanted to, if I really let you see who I most am inside, I'd be too much. And that causes us to hold ourselves back and then to think that we're not enough, right? We kind of twist this stuff around in our own brains. So the not being enough piece, I think, to some degree comes out of the editing and censoring. We edit and censor, and then we're not enough because we haven't shown up in our entirety. And we're afraid. We're afraid of disappointing. We're afraid of being hurt. We're afraid of underperforming. We're afraid. And I get that. I wish I had some, quick little 3-step plan that would help people get over that. I think how wealthy I would be if I could come up with that.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a process of changing our beliefs, right? Like, I have to talk to myself and say to myself, I am enough. I am not too much. Every bit of me is who I need to be, and you get to figure out how to deal with me. You get to love me for that person if I show up in my fullness, right? And similarly, to say I have to remind myself I'm more than enough. Absolutely. Now, I still have to do the work. I still have to have integrity. I still need to be skilled and competent and kind and all those things. But it's really like a belief that we have to just reframe in our brains and heal old messages that we've lived with for most of our lives, right? That we take in from our culture, that we take in from parents and from friends and old lovers and bad relationships and crappy bosses, and all those messages come in and tell us that we're not good enough, that we're not pretty enough, that we're not thin enough, that we're not smart enough, and they're all just big fat lies from the pit of hell. And we have to just start coming up with new belief systems that we hold. And you would know this, Shauna, because you've heard me talk about this, but I think one of the ways that happens for us is that we intentionally connect ourselves to stories, both live stories of other women, but also just like mythic, archetypal stories that show us examples of women who were more than enough, and who, when they showed up fully, other people did experience them as too much, and they said, you know what, your problem. And we can align ourselves with other women so that we don't feel alone in this process. And I just think that's super, super important, to be surrounded by community, both in story and in our brain, as well as just actual people that are in our lives that can pull that forth from us.
Yeah, I totally agree on that.
Yeah.
Part of this whole being able to talk to you and being able to have these resources online is just, that's what supports us, right? And we have to seek out more and more of that, I think.
Absolutely. I think we're really hungry for it. I mean, we live it's almost a paradox, right? I mean, I feel connected to more people than ever because of this online platform, right? I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of people over a period of time that I get to interact with, and often in conversations like this, right, where I get to see you or at least hear your voice. So on some level, connected to far more people. On another level, more isolated, because we can work right here at our desk. I never have to leave my house.
Yeah.
So I think we're hungry for kind of old-fashioned, real relationships, and of course, other women to be in community with.
Yeah.
Ronna, you have regular truth-telling prompts. Can you tell us more about those and how our viewers can subscribe to them?
Sure, I would love to. They have been so fun. It was kind of just a spur-of-the-moment thing that I came up with because I'm talking about this truth-telling thing all the time. So what I offer every single Wednesday is just a really quick little email, and it offers you just a very quick, doable step that it's kind of the incremental thing I was talking about, just kind of dipping your toes in the water. Very easy sort of thing to think about. Usually have a quote, and then I tell something from my own experience, and then give you a way to practice that for the next week. So on my website, you can totally, over on the right-hand sidebar, there's a sign-up box there, and you just give me your name and email, and you'll get one this Wednesday to sign up. Love for people to have those.
Awesome. Great. Is there any other programs or anything coming up that you would like to share with our viewers here today?
I had a pretty significant shift in the last few weeks in terms of where I'm spending energy. I've had programs that I've offered, and right now there are none. Like, if you go to my website, you won't see any. The only thing that people can pay me for right now is to hire me to speak. And so that's really what I'm focusing on, is opportunity to do retreats and keynotes and conferences and all those kinds of things. So toward that end, I would say, gosh, if anyone wants me to come and do a women's retreat or a gathering of 5 or 10 women who really want to think about their stories and think about truth-telling and what does it mean to be more than enough, and to love that about ourselves, I would love to come and do that. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Seattle's not that far away.
And I'll come to you, so that's all good too.
There we go. Okay. Well, thank you so much for participating, Ronna, and we're very excited to be sharing you with our viewers here. So it's great.
Thanks. Well, I love what you're doing. It's really a beautiful gesture. I mean, so generous on your part, and so many people that you're including. And so I love that you've chosen to do that, and I appreciate you reaching out to me. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.